Well, good morning. It's Brother Chad Long from Delhi Baptist Church. I'm running behind on my videos, and I apologize. This one was actually due yesterday, and our Wednesday night service hadn't been uploaded either. I'll work on all that this morning, get caught up. But anyway, I'm recording early enough that some of you won't notice, but I mean I noticed. It's way late. Had some things come up. But mysteriously, my computer problems seem to, I shouldn't say that, it can change while I'm talking, but I haven't had any computer problems in a while, and I never did get this thing to a shop. I just kind of quit. That's never happened before. That's good. That's good. Anyway, so we are in Hebrews chapter 12, and I want to share with you what I believe, honestly, the message that this is talking about, I've felt led to preach on for a while. Not all of it, but a portion of it. There's a certain direction that I think we would benefit us to study into, so I've considered that. But since not everybody in our church watches this, I could probably do both. I could probably expound on this here and still preach on it, and wouldn't but just a few people even notice. But anyway, Hebrews chapter 12 verse 1 says, "Wherefore seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us." Now, this cloud of witnesses he's talking about is this group of people that are used in an example of faith in the last chapter. As we read through chapter 11, there was more even than Paul could count. He said that time would fail. In fact, that was, thought I had it right here, but I didn't. What shall I say more? For the time would fail me to tell of these others. And he says that in verse 32 of chapter 11. So he didn't even feel that he had the time to list everybody that it would take to give a more exhaustive example. So, which wasn't necessary anyway. We got the point. But in chapter 12, verse 1, now Paul was saying, look, seeing that we've got these as an example, not necessarily that they're standing around as witnesses, but seeing we've got these for an example, and all of these things we can look back at, we need to lay aside every weight. We need to be willing to do what they did. We need to put aside everything that's holding us back. I think about ankle weights. You know, when you're working out, and this is actually a good illustration. It just hit me out of the blue. I wasn't planning to say this, but I think about when you some people who are in school or who are training for an event or working out, they'll use ankle weights to strengthen their legs, and they'll run with them on. And if you've never done this, then you may not know what I'm talking about, but you run in those ankle weights for a while, and you get good used to wearing them, and then you take them off, and oh wow, now you can really get. It feels like a weight's been lifted, because it has. You've taken those off, and you can really run. He's saying, look, let us lay aside every weight. Let us recognize the fact that we can take these burdens off of us, and we can really move for the Lord. He says, and the sin which does so easily beset us, which is another weight that we put on. Because sin is enjoyable, it's easy to fall into. It's easy to continue to sin and get bogged down in that. And it's just like trying to run through mud. If you try to run through swamp or mud, you can't run very fast. And the same is true with the Christian walk or run, is you can't get down, you can't get moving and get anything accomplished if you're bogged down in sin and wickedness. So he says, let's get the weights off of us, let's get them moving. And he says, let us run with patience the race that is set before us. And he uses that illustration, which is why I feel comfortable saying that. Verse 2 says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. Now, what has that got to do with anything? It means you can't run this race without him. You can't run any race without a focal point, and I'll tell you why. I say that, and I know there's exceptions to this. I know some people can walk out that door and just run aimlessly for hours. Some people have that gift. God bless them. I don't. Any race I've ever run, there had to be an objective. There had to be a finish line. And you had to know it was going to be over, because you can't run like that forever. Even horses can't run like that for long, long periods of time. Eventually, there's got to be an end to that race. You can't just run. Even a long-distance endurance runs have an objective. I mean, 5K, 20K, whatever it is, there's an end. There's something to shoot for, something to keep your eyes focused on. Well, Jesus is that finish line. Jesus is that focal point. Jesus is who it is we're supposed to be looking unto as we do all of these things. And that's what he means. Looking unto Jesus, who is the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross. Now, what that means is knowing what he would receive. Not only a trip back to heaven he'd already been. He already knew what that was about. But also the joy of knowing we'd be with him. We'd have that opportunity and we'd get to be with him. It was worth it to him. So look at the joy that was set before him if he just endured what he had to endure. Despising the shame, and is set down on the right hand of the throne of God. In other words, you look at his example and look to him in order to accomplish the goal that he set for us. And that just makes good sense. You can't do anything without him anyway. So make sure that he's involved in what you're trying to do, and then aim forward and take off. That's what that means. Verse 3, for consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds. Now this is a reference to, and it's worded weird because of the Old English. But what he's trying to say is, if you think about all he put up with, all that he endured, all of the hate, all of the vile things that were said, they accused him of blasphemy. You know how bad that's got to hurt the heart of Jesus to be confused, to be accused of something that he himself hates? Let me tell you, there's not anybody that's ever lived that hates blasphemy worse than Jesus, who is God, who is the person that folks blaspheme against. They were hypocrites in calling him a blasphemer. They were basically blaspheming him because he is God. So for him to be accused of these vile things and hated and reviled and cursed at and spit at him, I mean, you think about what he endured. It ought to help you and me to know we're going to endure some things. And that's really all that means. It says consider. Consider means think about the fact that he had to go through all of this. Consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners. It just means these sinners, and there's your contradiction, by the way. To be called a blasphemer who is the ultimate judge of blasphemy. So it's just ironic. Anyway, against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds. We get tired and we feel like we're doing all we can do and we can't do any more, but then we look at what Jesus endured and we ought to know we can keep going. We have no choice anyway. We've got to keep going. We've got to just aim forward and stick with it. He says, you have not yet resisted unto blood, striving against sin. In other words, whatever your persecution, whatever your troubles, you've not had to go through what he went through. And it ought to encourage you to keep trying, to keep going. And listen, it's about to get into a point that I'm not going to have time to finish. I'll finish it later today as I catch up on our videos. But, and I don't know how deep I can get into this, but he's about to make a point about how we are persecuted, how we've not yet resisted unto blood, striving against sin, but we are going to have to resist against some really difficult things. And if we are buffeted, if we are, what's the word I'm looking for? If we are tested, tried, if we are, chastened is the word I was looking for. If we're chastened, if it's of the Lord, well then it's for our correction. And if it's not of the Lord, then all things work together for good is what I'm getting at. And so even though we've not yet resisted under blood, striving against sin, we will come to a point where we'll have to, potentially at least, have to face all of these things. But we should remember that all these things work together for good, and that the Lord who loves us is growing us and improving us. Let me just go ahead and read a little further, and then I'll find a place to stop. Verse 5 says, "And you have forgotten the exhortation that speaketh unto you as unto children. My son, despise not thou the chastening of the Lord, nor faint when you are rebuked of him." Now, not everything we're going to endure is of him. Sometimes we endure things because of the world and the wickedness in it. But what Paul's saying here is, be willing to suffer for his sake either way, and then recognize that if you do suffer for his sake, sometimes that's your own chastening, and it's because God loves you. And that's the point we're going to develop in the next section. So I'll stop at verse 6. "For whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth." So basically what he's saying here is, these examples in faith endured a great number of things in order to show their faith. Not just say they have it, but to exhibit it and manifest it in a way that glorified God. And because we've got that as a witness, we should continue on, and we should keep our eyes on Jesus and look unto him who is the author and finisher. And remember that we're going to endure some things, but we've not yet had to endure what he had to endure. And that even when we do endure something, sometimes it's God teaching us something because he loves us. And that's the point. That's what this passage is saying. And that's what we're going to develop further in the next section. So anyway, think on these things, and remember, we've got a great example of faith set before us. We've got to try to at least do our part to live up to that example, to exhibit our own faith, to keep our eyes on Jesus, expect the world to hate us, and expect the Father to correct us as any good parent would. And that's the point for today. I hope that you'll take that, use and utilize that, and honor God with it. God bless you.